I love that a lot of them don't have a website. A lot of them use pen and paper for their records to keep track of their tenants,
Yeah.
their customers, and it just checks a lot of the boxes that I'm looking for with these facilities as far as a quote unquote mom and pop, or using the term that I used before on the podcast, unsophisticated owners.
You mentioned they don't have good record keeping, and you mentioned some of the attributes of a mom and pop. Why is that a good thing? It would seem to me that if they don't have good record keeping, that's just a pain in the butt.
It's good in that I can come in and fix it, and that's how I can add value to the facility.
There you go. There you go. Spoken like a true storage investor. And that's exactly right. And for those that might not quite be tracking, we want to keep in mind, as a business owner, you get paid in proportion to the size of the problems that you can solve. All right, my friends, I am pumped to hop on another episode here, season 2 on the Storage Wins podcast with my friend and Storage Wins community member, Dan Wenzel. Guys, we've been hearing that people have just kind of been learning about what we have been doing. And so after this episode, I want to encourage you to go back to the first episode, because we have been taking Dan through a process here, and we are on a quest. We're on a mission. Our goal is to have Dan close his first storage facility. And I don't know, I have put myself out there just like Dan has. And to Dan's credit, he has been doing the work. He has been, instead of me share with you the updates that I know are coming, Dan, I wanna kick it over to you, brother. You hopped on this, and before we started recording, I felt the energy and excitement, and you just started like sharing everything that's going on. And I'm like, stop, save this energy and this excitement for the show. Now, it's not the energy and excitement you're going to hear when Dan goes under contract. That's coming. He's knocking on the door. But this type of activity, this type of action has to happen in order to get to that point. So Dan, I feel like we were talking about basketball, dude. I literally have just thrown you an alley-oop. So now I need you to grab it and smash it. So give us some updates, man, since the last show.
Man, such good analogies. I don't know how you do it, but it just seems to flow smoothly for you with those. Yeah, I'm excited. So I kept hearing people talk about getting virtual assistants and how once they get them, it's taken so much off their plate, and it's bringing them more deals if that's what they're using the VA for. And I always wanted to, and I kicked the tires on it um, a bunch of times, and then finally had, for using that analogy again, an alley-oop where a Storage Wins colleague had a VA he was using, and who wanted some extra hours. And I was like, okay, I mean, it's not going to get much easier than this for me to get started using the VA. So she's already trained in real estate, not specific to self-storage, but I started using her for just 2 hours a day, and didn't see immediate results, but she just got her call volume up for me. I had her just making calls, basically scheduling appointments for me, with owners who are open to an offer for their facility. And then the deals just started coming in. The lists of owners who are open to selling, and some of them I called, and it was just someone trying to like flip their facility that they just bought 3 or 4 years ago. But the last 2 weeks, she's brought me, I think, 4 facilities that are longtime owners who
Boom.
have owned for 20, 30, 35 years, and they're ready to sell. And it's like exactly the kind of facilities that I'm looking for. And it's exciting. It's just great to have this higher volume of deal flow. So that's what I'm so excited about right now. And
And you should be excited. Now, I wanna frame this conversation. There's a couple things that I want to dive into a little bit deeper that I think is going to give the person listening a lot more of an understanding of the backstory. How, let me ask you this, brother. We have been talking about leveraging the right virtual assistants within our Storage Wins community pretty much since day one. Now, I will say you absolutely do not need to hire anybody to get started in this business, right? There are some times that people come into the community and based on limited time and or resources, there's a specific path that I believe is best for them to gain traction, momentum, and ultimately go under contract and ultimately buy that first facility. Then there's others that have some time and or resources where leveraging a virtual assistant is going to help you buy back your time. Then how long, not only myself, right, but like others in the Storage Wins community, our Storage Wins ambassadors and just other community members, right? How many times did we talk to you about, Dan, you got to hire a virtual assistant, man? Like you're wearing too many hats right now. Because I think you kind of sharing a little bit about that will really put in perspective why this is such a big win.
Yeah, it's probably been 8 months that I've been contemplating it and hearing others having success with it, and I mean longer than that I've heard others having success with it. And
Why? What was it that talk to us about your either your fears, concerns, frustrations? Like, what were some of the challenges in your head about, or the hiccups, the hangups about hiring a VA? Like, why did it take 8 months or longer?
I was thinking I already feel like I don't have enough time to do everything. How am I gonna find time to train a VA who
Yep.
doesn't know real estate, doesn't know self-storage, um, to put together the standard operating procedures, the SOPs for her to follow. That all just seemed time consuming to me, and I wanted to just keep making progress forward, even though it was slower progress forward. Um,
Mhm.
so that's probably what hung me up. And then the financial commitment. I mean, it's not, if you hired someone in the US, what you pay them minimum wage is it's a whole lot less than that. I pay her $7 an hour, which for her and her family is a good wage. So um, that's it's $70 a week, and
That's
she
right. Yeah.
is bringing me leads. So it's
Amazing.
been paying.
Amazing. Well, brother, kudos to you for jumping out and taking that leap, because I know there was a lot of, to your point, you were concerned about the time, and then obviously there's the money aspect. You've invested into this and you probably didn't want to like invest any more. You wanted to do it on your own. What would you say to the person listening to us that can relate to some of the pain points you had, or the mindset challenges around, hey, the time and the energy and all that? Like, speak to the person who has thought about bringing on a virtual assistant to help them with their storage investing efforts, or really with any aspect of their life or business, but just hasn't made that decision and taken that leap.
Well, something that maybe is a route that others could use to get started with a VA is reach out to your network. And if you have someone who's using a VA who wants some more hours, I mean, that's how I got started with it. And it made the transition much easier because I didn't need to fully train her. And it got me started with just a couple hours a day when I can't say for sure, but some some virtual assistants might be looking for more hours than that. So it kind of worked out well in that way
Yeah,
too.
and you said that this was another Storage Wins community member that had a virtual assistant that they had trained, that was looking for more hours. They didn't have enough hours to give them, and we talk about the power of the community. How helpful was it to, you just said your advice was reach out to your network. Well, part of your network, which, as they say, is your net worth, is the Storage Wins community. How valuable was it to be able to share on one of our community calls, post in our private school, like, hey, this is what I'm looking for, and like talk to us about how you were able to bridge that gap with somebody else in the community.
Um, just as I've gotten to know more people in the community and learning about their backgrounds, I knew uh, Kevin was his name. He has a background in real estate, and after connecting with him just about a storage deal that I was looking at,
Yeah.
he mentioned that he's currently using a VA, and then we kind of took the conversation further from there about the VA being open to more hours. So
That's right. That's
yeah,
right.
just
Yeah.
connect
Whatever.
members.
Here's one of the takeaways that I'm really hoping people can lean on and grasp is that whatever pain point, challenge, or frustration you're having, there is a solution. Now, you might not have the solution, or it might be right under your nose, so to speak, and that's in your network. The difference is sometimes people don't want to reach out to their network and ask for help and support. And that is the purpose of a community. Yes, it's to give and contribute, of course. It's also that when you're struggling, it's you reach out, or when you need something, you reach out and you leverage your community. You leverage the people in your network, and they're going to do the same with you because Dan, I've seen you numerous times hop on calls when somebody says, "Hey, I'd like to get an extra set of eyes underwriting this storage deal," and you're one of the first to reach out, or you're super active in our weekly storage wins coaching calls with our community, and people have people go to you a lot, especially for underwriting, right? And I don't think you give yourself enough credit for the knowledge you have and how good of an underwriter you are. And I want to encourage you, brother, to lean into that skill because that is a valuable give. And as you know, because you've been leading, we do our weekly group coaching calls. And for the last couple of months, you've been leading like weekly underwriting calls where sometimes you only have one person that pops on, sometimes it's more. You're going to do the work anyway. And I think that you've seen how that's opened the door to more opportunities and for more meaningful relationships and deeper connections. So, all that to say, whether it's you're looking for a virtual assistant or you need X or Y or Z, make sure that you're plugged into the right community and then reach out to them. Like when you have an ask, reach out because that's what the community is for. And it'll come back around the other way where people are going to reach out to you and then you can support them. So that's why I'm such a strong advocate and evangelist for being a part of the right community, man. And I know that you've experienced that, obviously. So, man, with that said, now you have what you said. I think you said that your virtual assistant has brought you 4 potential opportunities.
Yep, 4
Okay.
solid opportunities.
Okay. So when you say solid, is it solid based on the seller's motivation? Is it solid based on their asking price, and you think that they could potentially be a deal? Like, talk to us about what some of these deals might look like.
They're solid in that the owners are ready to sell. They the size of the facilities is relatively good size. It's not like 100,000 square feet, but a lot of them are about 25 to 40,000 square feet.
Yeah.
And
Good size facilities.
the the owners are realistic in their asking prices, and I love that a lot of them don't have a website. A lot of them use pen and paper for their records to keep track of their tenants,
Yeah.
their customers, and it just checks a lot of the boxes that I'm looking for with these facilities as far as a quote unquote mom and pop,
Yeah.
or using the term that I used before on the podcast, unsophisticated owners
Yeah.
that aren't necessarily optimizing their operations.
For sure. Why you mentioned they don't have good record keeping, and you mentioned some of the attributes of a mom and pop. Why is that a good thing? It would seem to me that if they don't have good record keeping, that's just a pain in the butt.
It's good in that I can come in and fix it, and that's how I can add value to the facility.
There you go. There you go. Spoken like a true storage investor. And that's exactly right. And for those that might not quite be tracking, we want to keep in mind, as a business owner, you get paid in proportion to the size of the problems that you can solve. And when we communicate with these mom and pop owners that might not have any marketing in place or any systems or automation, or they don't have good record keeping, they don't have a CRM, like they don't have pretty easy things for us to go. And to Dan's point, we can now implement many of those things. They haven't raised the rates because they're afraid to, or they don't know to. They don't know how to evaluate the competition. They have no idea where the average of the market street rates are. When we're just equipped with that basic information, we're able to spot opportunities. I remember, Dan, I just spoke about this on another call a couple days ago, where actually, it was on a podcast. I was being interviewed on a podcast, and they were asking me about my very first deal. And I remember when I was underwriting, and I don't think I've shared this with you, when I was underwriting my very first deal, that 43,000 square foot facility in Mississippi, they had a property management company in place. And I remember when I looked at the profit and loss statement, the P&L, and I looked at the expenses, you know how I've always shared, like, hey, I'm not really going to pay too much attention to the owner's expenses because I'm going to underwrite the deal based on my expenses. Here's the caveat to that. And I'm certainly going to look at like taxes, insurance, if there's any, cable, internet, that kind of stuff. Like that stuff is trash. That stuff's going to pretty much, for the most part, not taxes and insurance, but that stuff's going to stay fixed. There's certain line items that we can pretty much, what it is what it's going to be. Well, I saw that they were paying salaries of $60,000, $60K in salaries. And I used that. I used that as part of my underwriting when I presented an offer, because that inflated my expenses. Now, I knew I wasn't going to have $60,000 worth of expenses. At the time, my property management company was quoting me $2,000 a month. So I was saving $36,000. And we talk about the different ways to make money in storage. Well, one way, and this is in any business, you work on increasing revenue, which I'm a fan of. The other way is decreasing expenses. Ideally, it's a combination. Well, if I could save $36,000 and I apply a cap rate of 8% to that $36,000, you take $36,000 divided by 0.08, that's effectively a $450,000 increase in the value of the facility, just because I'm able to reduce that expense by 36 grand. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So you absolutely do want to look at the seller's expenses and use that to your advantage if you see that they're very high in certain areas. In most cases, these mom and pop owners that don't have good record keeping, that you're probably not going to find those opportunities because their expenses are dirt cheap. They're running and managing and operating it themselves. And sometimes it's the flip. It's the reverse. You have to educate them that, hey, I'm out of town. I'm not going to be managing it. I'm going to have, either third-party management, or I have to hire somebody. And sometimes it's a matter of educating them on, like, my taxes are going to go up when I buy this property. My insurance is likely going to go up. And I think when you drop those breadcrumbs, the seller sometimes starts to become a little bit more understanding and realistic about what it's going to take to actually sell the facility. I remember I've had conversations with owners that have no idea what a debt service coverage ratio is. DSCR. And a DSCR, for those listening, it's like if your facility is generating $50,000 of net operating income, right? Revenue minus expenses gives us our net operating income. And your annual debt service is $50,000. Well, that's break even. That's a debt service coverage ratio of 1. 50,000 divided by 50,000. Banks look for, well, Dan, let me kick it over to you, not to put you on the spot. What do banks look for on average in terms of a debt service coverage ratio?
I believe typically a minimum of 1.2.
You nailed it. So 1.2 to 1.3 on average is what I would say most banks require. So what does that mean? Let's use a different example. If we had a facility that generated, that had $100,000 of debt service, annual debt service, the bank would want to see that facility is generating $120,000 to $130,000 of NOI. 120 divided by that 100 gives us the 1.2. So sometimes I use that to communicate to the seller and say, look, based on your asking price, when I run the numbers, I won't be able to get bank financing because of the debt service coverage ratio. And then I'll break that down in layman's terms, what that means. And I think sometimes you have to use, whether it's the expenses or things like DSCR or the interest rate, right? Because a seller doesn't care about any of that stuff. They want their price. And I think you need to sometimes use those tools to be able to explain to the seller that, hey, this is not just my situation, but most buyers that go get bank financing are going to run into this or that, right? Dan, any questions about any of that? Okay.
I follow.
So the 4 deals, what's the next step here? Like, where are you at in the process with these?
I have scheduled a call with one of them for later today, and I plan to make an offer during that call. I've ballparked all of them on where I believe I'll come in with an offer, and they all seem realistic as far as where my ballpark price comes in, or they seem okay with where my estimated purchase prices have come in. So I'm going to follow up with one of them today, and then the others I'll work on offers to put together and follow up with them next week.
Okay. Okay. Can you tell us, is there any one in particular that you're excited about? And if you can kind of walk us through what the deal looks like and what some of the numbers are? Because by the way, if I'm listening to this podcast and I hear you being so excited about 4 potential deals, like I'm like, okay, well, Alex is gonna certainly ask about like what does it look like? What's the potential? What's the opportunity? You know how many times, brother, I'm asked like, hey, how much cash flow can storage provide for you? And what's the answer? What's the 2-word answer?
It depends.
It depends, right? It's so difficult. People ask me that all the time, like, hey, how much cash flow can I generate from storage? There are so many variables and factors that it would be impossible for anybody to give you a specific number, because how big is the facility? How did you purchase it? Was there bank financing? Was it an equity? Was there an equity partner involved? What market is it in? What are the rates? I mean, there are so many considerations and factors, but with the underwriting that you've done, pick one deal, maybe the one that you're most excited about. Walk us through, give us some of the details about the facility, right? Like how many net rentable square feet. And I don't know if I'll kind of share, I'll kind of frame this so that you can look it up. How big is the facility? How many net rentable square feet? What's the seller's situation? Like, why is it that they want to sell? How did you find this opportunity? Or how did your virtual assistant find the opportunity? And then talk to us about, is it a cash flow deal? Is it more of an equity upside play? Is it a hybrid? And by the way, I know I'm asking you a lot of questions here. I'm just, as they say in the media world, I'm buying time for you to look up the details of the deal. So don't feel the need to write this down. I can recap it for you. But basically, just give us an overview of the opportunity.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm pretty pumped about all of them, honestly. They're all deals that I would come across maybe every other month from my own cold calling, and my VA just dropped them all on me in the last 2 weeks. So I've never had that volume of great potential leads.
Hold
before.
on, I gotta mess with you a little bit. I gotta tease you, dude. When you say your VA dropped the ball, usually when you say somebody dropped the ball, that's a bad thing.
You're right.
Okay. She dropped a bomb on you, meaning like, hey, I got all these opportunities.
Yeah, that's a better way to put it. Yeah.
Okay, beautiful. And so, before you share these details, you can pursue them all. It doesn't mean you're going to close on 4 facilities at the same time, right, but some of those could be wholesale opportunities, right? To other Storage Wins members or in the Storage Wins Facebook group. I mean, so let's tackle these. I don't know if we're going to be able to get to all 4, but maybe let's pick 1 or 2 and just give us an overview here. Like, what makes you excited about it?
So the one I'm going to call the owner back on today, it's 36,000 square feet. It has 125 units, which is not a lot of units for 36,000 square feet, but it's more than 80% large units that are 10 by 25 or larger. So that's why it's such a low unit count for that square footage. So 36,000 square feet, 125 units. she's asking 2.4 million. She had an offer at 2.2 million, but as I dug into that offer more, she wasn't thrilled with the person or the company that was looking to buy it. So it seems like she was hesitant to move forward with that company.
Before you keep
So
going, because I think there's some meat here for those listening, is there anything that you learned, or was there a takeaway or an insight as to why? Because you said that she's looking for 2.4 and they offered 2.2.
yep.
Okay, why? What was it about that company, or did she share any insight there? And was there anything that you took away from that part of the conversation?
Yeah, so I said to her, that seems like a great offer. Why wouldn't you accept that offer?
My man.
Yeah, I learned that one from you. And she said, well, the buyer added their own realtor fee to that deal, and they weren't thrilled with that. That they would just add their own fee, kind of in their own way, adding to the price for or
Yeah.
getting more money out of the seller.
Yeah.
So that kind of rubbed her the wrong way and turned her off to that buyer.
It sounds like they
So
probably didn't frame it properly or disclose it like well in advance, and maybe they just sent her the agreement. They kind of slipped it in there, and that rubbed her the wrong way. So, okay, and look, and you had mentioned something. What Dan alluded to is, and Dan is going to know exactly where I'm going with this, but you never want to chase a seller, a prospect, someone that you might be interested in, right, in your love life. Like, you don't necessarily chase. Ideally, you're attracting that person. In fact, I had this example. I was talking to my daughter, my 8-year-old, who's interested in storage. I don't know if she's interested, but I'm hoping to make her interested. She's the one that on my Instagram, I asked her why we like storage, and so we were talking about storage, and we were just talking about like sales and the importance of like that you're always selling, whether it's yourself or if you're a parent, you're selling your kids on why they need to brush their teeth and floss and have manners and treat people with respect and go to bed on time, and what you're always selling. And I shared with my daughter, I said, Alessia, what happens if I go like this to you and I literally put like my nose up to her face? But I didn't say me because she probably just would have kissed my nose. But I said, if it was a stranger and somebody like puts their face right in front of you, like, what are you gonna do? And she's like, oh, that's weird. And I said, yeah, it's weird, but what would you do? And she's like, I'd go like this. I said, exactly. So when you're in a sales environment and you're talking to a storage owner, you don't want to be like that, like thirsty puppy, like just like clawing at their ankles, wanting to buy the deal. Like, you want to stay a step behind them. You don't want to lean into them. You want them to lean into you. And so whenever I have a storage owner that tells me, oh, we got this offer, and they're talking it up and this and that, like I will pretty much more times than not say, like, that sounds like an amazing offer. Like, when are you closing? I'll just assume they're under contract, knowing that 9 out of 10 times they're not under contract. Otherwise, why are we having a conversation? And they'll say, "Oh no, we're not under contract, or we're not going to be closing." And then I'll just be surprised, like, "Oh, why not? That's an amazing offer. What happens?" And then they start to lean into me, and now I'm the one backing up. That's kind of the dynamic you want. So think about attracting, not chasing. Hey, dude, anything to add to that? Because I know that I think that was like a takeaway for you in one of our last conversations.
nothing to add. It's just that's something that I'm still working on a lot. I think I maybe chase a little more than I push them away, and that's something I just need to work on.
Yeah, yeah. Look, sometimes I'll say, "Hey, listen, I'm not even sure that I'm going to be the best buyer for you, and I don't even know that I can get close to your asking price. But if I could, dot dot dot." So I'll just drop breadcrumbs and seeds that like, hey, listen, I have other things going on. I have other facilities I'm looking at. And by the way, it's all genuine. It's not, I'm not like just like throwing up smoke screens. So like, I'm not telling you to lie, like, but you are looking, hopefully you're looking at other deals and you don't have an unlimited amount of capital. And that's why do you think there's deadlines on purchase agreements? It's so you have to bake in that scarcity and urgency. Okay. So, all right, brother. So before you keep going, so 36,000 net rentable square feet, asking 2.4 million. How did your virtual assistant find this opportunity?
Virtual assistant found it through cold calling.
Okay. And found it through cold calling on Google, just a classic Google Maps approach, cash flow maps.
I bought a list
Okay.
and she's just calling through the list.
Okay. Got it. They're gonna throw virtual tomatoes at me if I don't ask you where you bought the list. So let's have an abundant mentality and drop the gold, brother. Where'd you buy this list?
This one was from I purchased two lists before, and this one trying to find it
Well,
was
why don't you share
data.
exact data you said?
The name of the company
Yeah.
was Data Axle.
Okay, so this is Data Axle, which used to be Info USA. So dataaxle.com, I've bought lists from them as well. The cool thing about Data Axle is you can call them, you'll speak to somebody, and then you give them your exact criteria. Make sure that you eliminate any REITs, any real estate investment trusts like Public Storage, Extra Space, CubeSmart, U-Haul, Life Storage. Like you want to eliminate any of the big institutional players. Give them the range of net rentable square footage. Obviously, give them cities, geography, any zip code info you might have. It could be a particular region. Is there anything else from a criteria standpoint, Dan, that I'm missing when you reach out to Data Axle?
Sometimes one thing I did for one of the lists I purchased was I gave them a radius. I said I'm looking for everything within a radius of this region
Yeah.
or this city.
That's good. I also I tell them make sure exclude. I don't want car washes. I don't want auto body shops. I don't even want like industrial or warehouse. I'm looking for self storage or mini storage. So the more specific you can be with your criteria, the better. Full disclosure, I personally haven't had success. I haven't bought any facilities from my Data Axle list, but I do know some people who have. So I think the quality, I haven't tested it in a while. I remember when I first bought it, I thought the quality was a little bit hit or miss. I had some good leads, and then I had some others that I had to go back to them and say, hey, this is industrial, or it's not, storage, etc. And they'll work with you on that. So Dan, I don't. I want to keep this one a little tighter today, but tell us what else. So she's asking 2.4. What is the current revenue of the facility? Do you have that?
Revenue is 212,000 for 2024.
Okay, so 200. So walk us through for the person listening that is fuzzy on analyzing a deal, just like back of the napkin analysis. Obviously, on a podcast, we're not going to dive into the storage wins like evaluator spreadsheet, but like, okay, so last year they generated 212,000. How would you explain to someone, like if that's all the data we had right now, 36,000 net rentable square feet, she's asking 2.4 million. Revenue of last year was $212,000. What are you doing with that information to figure out if this makes sense to potentially pursue or not?
A really rough, quote unquote, back of the napkin math that I initially use, that I often use when I'm on phone calls with owners, is I'll multiply it by 0.65 or 0.6 to back out the expenses.
So let me just pause for a second. So what Dan is doing is in storage, we have on average the operating expenses in storage are anywhere between 30% and 40%, again, on average. Are there going to be some cases where you can operate better than 30%? Maybe in some. Are there going to be some where it's a bit above 40? Yes, possibly. 35%, I would say, is a pretty good average. Now, just footnote, the smaller the facility, the higher the expense ratio you're going to want to use. The bigger the facility, then you can tend to use a little bit of a lower expense ratio, 30, 35 for something, I would say 20,000 square feet and up. So what Dan is doing is he's taking that 212,000 and he's multiplying it by 60% or 65% to back out the 35 or 40% expense ratio. Right? So what did you use here? Did you use 35% expense ratio?
I did,
Okay,
because
so
it's 36,000 square feet. So get those economies of scale a little bit to get the expense ratio down.
exactly right. So if you take 212,000 times 65%, you come up with a projected net operating income of what? 137,800, correct?
That sounds right.
Okay, so what do you, again, this is back of the napkin. What do you do with that 137,800?
I apply a cap rate valuation to it. So that's the cap rate, just for a quick recap, is adding a multiple to the net income based on where that current market is trading. And so I initially apply an 8 cap and an 11 cap and use that as my range to just bounce a price off the seller to get their first, to anchor them in their head of where I see the value of the facility, and I can always go up from there. But then that gives me a conservative estimate of what I can pay for the facility.
Okay. So if you were to apply an 8 cap, meaning you take that 137,800 divided by 8%, that's going to give you a projected value of 1.722. Let's just call it 1.7 million. Okay?
Yep.
So if we kind of stop there, some would say, "Oh, but she's asking 2.4 million. Like she's 600 to 700 grand above what it's currently worth." So what made you want to dig a little bit more here?
She sent me her prices for each size unit, and this was such a beautiful thing to learn. She's charging higher rents for smaller units than, for example, a 10 by 25 is $83, and then a 10 by 14, which is about 50 square feet smaller, she's charging $125. So she's charging a higher price for smaller units, a relatively smaller unit. So, and then comparing it to the competitive market, other storage facilities in their market, they're about 50% of the rates of those competitors. So there's just a whole lot of meat on the bone there to increase those rates and increase the revenue.
Okay. So you know how we've talked about this, and I think we've talked about this on the podcast, that whenever we analyze and underwrite deals in the storage wins community, like we always look at 3 different scenarios. We look at worst case scenario, the likely scenario, and the best case scenario. We will never buy on the best case scenario. That's how you can get in trouble. Never buy if everything has to go right. I tend to like to buy on the worst case scenario, meaning, hey, if I'm not able to raise the rates to the level I think, if I'm not able to implement X, Y, and Z, does the deal still quote unquote pencil? Does the deal still work? Now, I won't necessarily kill a deal if it doesn't work on the worst case scenario, because I'm confident I could at least get it to the likely scenario. But I like to see what the difference is. And if it doesn't work in a worst case scenario, I like to have a plan A, B, and C, mitigate against some of that risk. We've talked a lot about that. If we were just making an offer based on the current revenue using our expenses, then Dan should be making an offer hypothetically somewhere in the 1.7 range, correct? But did you decide that it makes sense to offer her 2.4?
I ran a couple scenarios. I did a bank finance scenario, and the rigidity and high cost of a bank loan, it's going to bring that purchase price, my purchasing power down. So that's generally the lowest price offer. And then the next scenario is a combination of a bank loan and partially seller financed, to have the seller carry a note for part of that purchase price. And the existing offer they have has an $800,000 seller carry. So I was just looking to match their offer. And to correct myself from earlier, the offer they received was actually $2 million.
Okay.
And It was an $800,000 seller carry, and she didn't say she completely disliked the offer. It was more the buyer that it seemed like she didn't want to sell to.
So it stands to reason that even though she's asking 2.4, clearly she likes you. By the way, this is the seller that I challenged you to call while I was kind of in the background, just listening and taking notes, right? This is her.
Yeah, yes, that one.
And she likes you a lot. And it was very evident just listening to a 12-minute conversation you had with her. So it stands to reason that you can probably get this deal somewhere in the 2 million range, maybe slightly lower, somewhere in that range, and potentially with some seller financing.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay, got it. How do you determine how much you can increase your offer based on the potential, the future potential? Right? Like in this case, if you were going to make an offer based on the current revenue factoring in 8 cap, we talked about you being somewhere in the 1.7 range. Let's just say that 2 million works for the deal. That's a $280,000 bump on what you think it's worth based on today's revenue. So what gives you the confidence that you can make an offer of 2 million bucks? I know you talked about the fact that the rates are 50% below the market, but yeah, how do you determine and decide? And I obviously I know the answer, but I want people to hear from you. How are you determining how much future value you're going to give them with today's offer?
Flexible terms. If they're willing to carry a note, that makes the money that I borrow is cheaper than if I borrowed it from a bank. So if they're willing to carry 800,000 at a lower interest rate, that allows me to pay a higher price.
Okay. Remember something, guys. Your price, my terms. My price, your terms. If you can get your price and your terms, then amazing. But more times than not, as long as it's not like something obscene, right? Like more times than not, I'm willing to entertain whatever a seller wants in terms of the price, as long as I can dictate the terms. And what are the 4 things we look for with the terms?
Purchase price, down payment, monthly payment amount or interest rate, kind of word that differently to the seller one way or another, and
The term of the loan.
the term of the loan.
The term of the loan. And that's a big one, the term of the loan, right? So you have down payment, you have interest rate, and you have the term of the loan. If they're going to if you're going to give them their price, make sure to control all 3 or as many of them as possible, and you can work with them to figure out a scenario that makes sense. Okay? So, awesome, brother. Well, hey man, I'm going to maybe we'll tease everybody and maybe next week we'll dive into some of these other ones. And in fact, in the next week you might, who knows where we'll be on these opportunities. Let's see if you're able to get 1, 2, 3, maybe all 4 under contract. Let's see if there's any hiccups and snags along the way. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. Neither do you. You mentioned that you have a conversation pending this afternoon with that seller.
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay, beautiful. Well, guys, make sure to tune in next week's episode where we're going to dive further into what the status is of these opportunities. And we just touched on one of them. In order to do that, make sure that you're subscribed here to the Storage Wins podcast. And if you're just joining us, or maybe you just discovered this podcast, make sure to go back and listen like through Dan's journey. Like we literally started from the very, very beginning. And again, like I mentioned at the top of the show, we are on a quest and a journey. And I'm doing everything in my power to help Dan close on his first facility. And I don't know if we're going to succeed. I believe in Dan 1000%. I know he can do this. But I always say we cannot control if we buy a deal. All we can control is our mindset, our actions, and our output, the things that we commit to do every single day. If you focus on consistently taking the right massive imperfect action, that is what will put you in a position to go under contract and buy your first or your next facility. So Dan, any parting thoughts, man?
I'm just excited to keep working on these facilities because the deal flow, the higher volume of deal flow is pretty exciting. It's got this
Yeah,
big smile on my face.
I love it. I love it. Hey, one last thing before we wrap. Make sure, and we could talk about this on a future episode. Make sure that, and I don't know if you have some type of agreement in place with your virtual assistant, but if you don't, I would encourage you to incentivize. It's a female, your virtual assistant. Make sure to incentivize her based on deals that you close. Okay, that could be a $250 bonus. That could be a $500 bonus. That could be a $1,000 bonus. I mean, you get to determine what that is. But, and she's in the Philippines?
Yes.
Okay. $500 to $1,000 bonus on top of what she's getting paid. That's pretty significant.
Yeah.
And that is a drop in the bucket for you if you're able to get the right deal. So that will motivate and incentivize, like that incentive will motivate your VA like crazy. So if you don't, do you have something in place with her?
I don't.
Brother, now that the iron is hot, right, and she's brought you these opportunities, reward her by offering her, hey, when these opportunities close or when some of these opportunities close, I just want you to know that I'm going to bonus you X amount of dollars, whatever's in your heart to want to bonus that person. That she's going to light up like a Christmas tree, dude. I'm telling you, she's gonna work even harder for you. She's gonna continue to want to bring you opportunities because she's incentivized to do so.
Great point.
Okay, so I just wanted to kind of drop that nugget here before we wrap this particular episode. So again, guys, I want to encourage you, make sure that you're subscribed here on the Storage Wins podcast, and if you want to get just a deeper look into what we do in our Storage Wins community, I want to have you go, and my invitation to you, go to storagewins.com and watch that short video. Just fill out the form and we'll schedule a quick call and just ultimately determine and see if it's a fit. All right. So aside from that, I'll continue to plug in here and we'll continue to show up for you and just be raw, real, vulnerable. We'll tackle challenges as they come. We'll celebrate the wins as they come as well, and everything in between. So I'll connect with you guys in the next one. Take care, Dan.